They will meet by happenstance or fate, what the military will call a meeting engagement. The road network draws the two armies to Gettysburg. In the distance, you hear bugle calls. Bugles were used. Certain tunes would indicate certain orders or messages.
Probably better to sit down in the first couple.
The three main types of communication on a confusing battlefield are the quarters we mentioned earlier, the signal corps, which of course is dependent on visibility and limited somewhat, and the other major method of communication, in addition to musical instruments, bugles, is telegraph. But of course, because nobody knows the battle's going to be here at Gettysburg, they don't have time to set up telegraphs on the battlefield itself. However, the Union Army does have telegraph lines sent back to Washington, where they can send reports of what's going on to the federal capital.
I know. It's already pouring down my back. Oh, God.
You know, folks, if you ever go to a museum and you look at uniforms, you might get the idea that over the course of 150 years they may have shrunk. The fact of the matter is, most of these Civil War soldiers weren't as tall as people are today. Over the course of 150 years, due to improved nutrition, the average height of a man has increased by about 2 or 3 inches, from about 5'7" to 5'8" to about 5'10".
Standing that close, taking the shots at each other. That had to be horrible. So apparently they're terrible shots because nobody. Well, I think the guns were very accurate. And they can't have too many soldiers fighting. Can't have too many soldiers fighting because they don't have too many. Oh, that guy in the horse is dead. I'm surprised that officer isn't dead. That's a nice hat. Is my hat in your way? No. Oh, we're talking about that. Oh, okay. No, you're fine. Okay. Oh, they're moving.
There was a professor at Pennsylvania College in Gettysburg, citizen by the name of Michael Jacobs. And it's because of Michael Jacobs that we know on the first day of the battle that the temperature recordings were in the upper 70s. And the weather was described as overcast, which in this part of the country at this time of year usually means humidity.
Yeah, that right.
As the Union infantry approaches from the south, they can begin to hear the sounds of the artillery and the musketry in the distance west of Gettysburg. And that may quicken their step just a little bit faster. Really, folks, for the first time, the Union Army will be fighting a battle in the 2 years of this war on home soil. As Union soldiers came into town the day before the battle, people came running out to greet them with cakes and pies and flowers and sing patriotic songs. Just a few days before, the Confederates had been in town and gathered supplies and shaken up the civilians. But now, there are Union soldiers in town, and this reception they get will lift their spirits greatly. For the last 2 years, they've been the enemy army, the occupying army in Virginia, where they've been spat upon and sneered at. And now, for the first time in the war, they cross the Mason-Dixon line 10 miles south of Gettysburg and enter the first solidly Union town they will have experienced in the war. And it's good that their morale has been lifted, because the next morning, they're going to have to hold these Confederates off for 3 hours. But it also makes these Union soldiers realize the importance of what is about to occur. For the last 2 years fighting the war in Virginia, they've been, for the most part, losing battles. And to lose a battle in Virginia simply means that the war goes on. But to come up here to Pennsylvania in July of 1863 and lose a battle on home soil could mean the end of the war. At approximately 10:15 to 10:30 in the morning, General Reynolds and his staff will arrive at the seminary. Reynolds will look up to the cupola at the top of the seminary where General Buford is stationed and ask General Buford, "How goes it, John?" Buford will point ahead to the battle in the front, and the trees of McPherson Ridge, and say, "There's the devils to pay." Reynolds says, "Can you hold? My men are right behind me." And Buford answers, "I reckon I can." Shortly after Reynolds, the Union infantry will begin to arrive on the field to relieve the cavalry. And the lead Union unit is perhaps the most famous of the 51 brigades that fought at Gettysburg on the Union side, a brigade being approximately 1,500 to 2,000 men. This is the Iron Brigade. These are the only all-Western soldiers in the chief Union Army operating in the East. They are not from California, Washington, Oregon, New Mexico, Arizona, or Nevada. These men are from what we consider today to be the Midwest, and they primarily consist of men from Wisconsin, Indiana, and a little bit of Michigan added in. And along with the Union infantry will come their supporting artillery. Artillery units are made up of guns, what we call pieces. 2 guns forms a section. Each gun commanded by a sergeant, crew of approximately 8 men serving the gun. Lieutenant commands the section of 2 guns, and a captain commands a battery of 4 to 6 guns. At Gettysburg, both smoothbore bronze guns were being used, and also the new black rifled wrought iron and cast iron artillery pieces. Good artillery crew, 8 to 10 men, can fire at approximately the same rate that an individual soldier, infantry soldier, can fire, which is about 2 to 3 well-aimed shots per minute. Now, when the Iron Brigade arrived in the battlefield, and by the way, guys, they got this name because during Lee's previous invasion 9 months before down in Maryland, the Antietam campaign, as these men were attacking South Mountain from the east, the commander of the Army of Potomac, George McClellan, saw the men attacking the hills and said, "Who are those men? They fight like iron," and the name stuck.
Yep, they were.
I read that in one of those books I got. We're going to move the battle to that side. That's, yeah.